Good evening. Good evening, everybody. I think it's a good moment to start. Wait just 1 second. Yeah, good evening, everybody, and welcome to V2 or V2 TV for now, for sure, to the Who Cares session. This is the fourth Who Cares sessions, and for all of you who've been joining in for the last three as well, it's a somewhat different setting now. The other three I was presenting from the exhibition space itself, next to the work that we're going to discuss. But in the current time, with the curfew, I'm presenting from home. So, but we'll give you a guided tour later on. Video document based on video documentation to get you an insight, so that should work just as fine. So tonight we're here with We Make Carpets and Frederiek Bennema, and we're going to talk about setting parameters in the artistic process. But before that, I'd like to give a small introduction into this the Two Minds to Care project. So the first chapter of this interdisciplinary study of care is the publication, Two Minds to Care, published by V2 Publishing somewhat 1.5–2 years ago, by edited by Joke Brouwer and Sjoerd van Tuyne, which is already by itself a deep study, which consists of 12 essays, 11 theoretic essays, and one visual artistic essay. So that's something I consider as the first chapter of this research. After reading it, I felt there was so much that I could do with it as a curator. So I started. So this was my starting point to create an exhibition where I focused on the act of caring. The exhibition focused on the contribution of Ellen Dissenyake in her essay Captured Caring About Capsules. She argues that the things that we do not take care of lose our attention and therefore are eventually forgotten. According to her essay, art fulfills a necessary role in directing our attention towards things that are important or should be considered important. And artists do this by taking care of, through their motivation, planning, dedication, strength, precision, skill, and patience. The results of these actions offer insight into what caring means in the practice of an artist. But they also provide insights in the preconditions of taking care of taking care of something, someone, but also taking care of technology, or technology taking care of humans. And with this point, I picked this act of caring for humans, other life forms, and technology as a starting point, and also focusing on what all of them can learn from each other. The current situation we're in, I'm not sure how many of the attendees were able to see the exhibition, because after a successful opening and lovely opening weekend, we had to close down due to the COVID measurements. So for the ones who weren't there, we created a video documentation, which I want to show you to give a bit more of a context what we presented there. That can be played now. Yes. Maria is correct. The sound is missing in the video. I don't know if Richard can still do something about it, but I can also give somewhat of context. This is a work by Natalie Hayward. We've been talking to the first day, the Wednesday, and together with Janet Pols, and what she created is a work where technology is taking care of the plants. Oh. We're quickly hopping towards Dries and Verstappen's work, which is the visual essay I mentioned. That's part of the publication, but we also presented in the exhibition. So it's a series of really beautiful photos of plants that grew horizontally in the artist studio on the size of the publication. So really looking at the boundaries that for growth. What can they still can all of these plants still grow and survive in a horizontal box within the artist studio? And what I really like, I don't know how many of you were able to browse through the publication or as PDF or as a book, but you because it's also in the publication, you have this beautiful focus on these images. Just as while reading through the book, you encounter them, and yeah, it's so different than working, looking into the work in an exhibition setting. Now I'll stop talking because this is the work by We Make Carpets. And we'll talk about that a lot more. And we end by the work of Annemarie Gomez-Lopez, who works both theoretically but also with self-experimentation around the body, performative. But I also won't dive too deep into her work because she just gave a really beautiful talk yesterday, and which will be available in the coming week. So if you're interested in this, I highly recommend to also listen to yesterday's talk. Thank you, Richard, for showing the documentation. I hope this gives somewhat of a glimpse of what the exhibition had entailed for you when you, if you were able to visit it. After watching it the fourth time with an audience, it makes me a little sad that we're not able to open it up, but that's just the current state that we're in. Before really kicking it off, what's good to know is the infrastructure we chose is a webinar setting in which you only see the the ones we go in conversation with. You won't see the other visitors, but feel free to use the chat or Q&A function if you have questions to add, and we'll get to that later on as well. And yeah, without further ado, I like to introduce the speakers. Frederiek Bennema studied art history in Groningen and is lecturer in art design and in art and design theory at the Minerva Academy in Groningen, and is a PhD candidate at the University of Groningen, where she's working on a project involving dialogic and participatory approach to higher art education. Her research concerns the development of an ecological arts pedagogy. She regularly presents at conferences and has published in the Dutch journal Boekman. And We Make Carpets is a collective of 3 Dutch designer artists. The Dutch collective consists of Marcia Nolte, Stijn van der Vleuten, and Bob Waardenburg. Then they have spent the past decade transforming everyday objects and materials into site-specific installations, and has taken the world by storm since its formation in 2009. The trio has exhibited their work in museums from Australia and Netherlands to the United States, and in continuous pursuit of finding new forms and possibilities. So that's, and I have 2 options in which we can take this. And what might be an interesting starting point is for We Make Carpets. The first question is how is your relationship to care? And maybe I should.
Shall I answer this? Because it's the 2 of us, of course, so we will be.
Yeah.
Well, I think we put a lot of care in the installations that we create, since we are using everyday objects, which are really well known and common, but we try to create something totally different from these objects. So there goes a lot of attention and care, if you want to call it care, into the installation itself, I think. And it takes a lot of time, effort to create an installation the way we do it.
Is it, we've been talking about it a lot, and I've been talking with Dora after she did some, our curatorial intern. Is there something you want to elaborate a little bit on the way you approach coming to an installation?
Yeah, shall I answer it?
Yes, please.
I think in the big lines we mainly approach a project being a site-specific project, which means we really start at the space where work will come, and I think after that everything flows from the space where we will build it. So the dimensions, but also the materials, and I think once we know the dimensions we start with making lists of materials, I guess, and then it's all this is a really conceptual phase. So it stays conceptual for a very, very long time. You have seen the proposals we did for the exhibition. It stays a concept until the moment we start building it, and then we have all the material, and then we are on the site with the material, and then we let it grow from the middle. So we don't have a design up front. We only have the dimensions and the space and the approximate placement of the piece. but all the rest we do on site. So also the work is site specific. So we try to put everything on site. Yeah.
I have a question. Is that okay?
Please, of course. Yeah, feel free.
Yeah, because does it sometimes also happen that you start all over again with a new material?
In the planning phase, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, in the planning phase it does, and with like the execution, if you want to call it like that, like the second phase or the last phase, or then it happens quite often that we have to take down a part of the piece. We won't use a new material, so we won't start fully over, but we will definitely take down some parts that are not working in a way, or so we that happens quite a lot.
It's maybe also nice to add that we always work on deadlines, because it's always site specific. So it's always some institutes have a two-week building period. Sometimes they have 1 week, sometimes they have a month, but it's always within this period that the previous exhibition is gone and the next exhibition gets built. So we're always working towards a deadline. So always there's most of the time there's no time to take everything out, and so we have to deal with the consequences.
And I'm also very curious how you come to the point that you say, okay, this is not a material we're going to work with.
We do a lot of tests. So I think there are two things that we do quite well. Is that we I think the three of us have quite a good imagination, or we can visualize a lot of things in our head. So if I say to Stijn, well, maybe a roll of paper is a good idea, I know that he has the same idea of a roll of paper in his head that I have in my head. And then we do some tests, and then we can, if we make like a 10 square centimeters, I can already see like, okay, this does have potential if we do a big piece with it, or it doesn't. So that's how that process goes, I think.
And how is your relationship to the material? Because I've the works that I've seen now, thinking of it, you never dismantled a material, or partly or am I? So you keep it. You've been working with from the cocktail umbrellas to of course the candy bars, but I don't think I ever saw half of one of these products. Or
no, we try to use the materials as they come. Although if you look at the piece that we did at V2, it's of course a piece of paper, colored paper. We could do everything with it, and that actually we had a totally different proposal for V2, as you know, but since we were already thinking of the A4 paper, we started like looking into what else can we do with the material. So the other way around, we really look at the potentials of materials as, for example, A4 paper, but we never dismantle objects to something to use. So the other way around, we create pieces from raw material, if you call paper raw material, but not the other way around. We don't chop up things, or no.
Was for me the first thing that I thought of while walking in, seeing the setup of the first rolls, because of course you have the two options of a paper, how you can roll it up, and that already gives dimension. But my first thought was immediately that you might have cut off the half of it. So that's so it's good to see that from the source material you already have multiple options. There's no, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm also maybe that's also a way of paying respect to the materials, to not cut them or to fabricate them.
Maybe, but we always try to create boundaries for ourselves to work with. So for example, when we started this collaboration, we were always aiming to have it like loose laying, or but we are always stretching up the boundaries. But one of the things is that we try to use the materials that we are using in the installations that we create as they come. Also, if it comes to colors, for example, if sponges come in like a variation of 6 colors, we use them all 6. So
yeah, and I think what's also interesting, if I think back to like 11 years ago when we started working together for the first time, we were just collecting stuff. So we were going to factories, we were going to people who sold out their whole barn, and we were just collecting stuff and then arranging it. Also, your graduation, Stein, was just a collection of stuff. And my work individually was also like always repeating stuff. So I think that from the point of collecting stuff, we are still doing that. So we are collecting all these materials, and then you find one, and we collect all the colors, and we arrange them, and we rearrange them, and we rearrange them again.
But you also do that on site. So when you have a space where you're gonna work in, is that also the place where you collect all the stuff, all the things?
Back then, yeah. Back then, the first exhibition we did actually was just we just bought a lot of trash for really cheap and put it all in one space. This was actually before the whole upcycling, hacking, IKEA thing, and we just made new things out of all the trash we bought. Yeah, but I think it's still that way. Most of the time we just send the materials for the artwork, we send it to the exhibition space, and we meet the material for the first time in the space where we were also going to use it. Yeah. Right.
I see Maria Verstappen asked maybe in the question in the Q&A section what will happen with the material after it, and I think that could be an interesting point, because especially how in this case the relationship you built with the material. Do you think of the after the exhibition moment? Yeah,
of course we have to. I think. Although sometimes the answer, for example, if it comes to the piece that we did at V2, that will be recycled into new paper. So that's quite easy. Sometimes it's harder if it comes to plastic pieces, for example. And what we used to do is saving everything saving all the material to maybe create another piece from it. And sometimes we did. But of course, the new materials are always more interesting to work with. So, but we always try to find a new home or whatever for the material that we have been using. But sometimes it's really hard to, and then it's just what it is, and we let's say throw it away. But of course, we always try to have it recycled, or
we'll just have thousands of sponges for the rest of your life.
Yeah. For example, I ate for years from the pasta carpet we once made.
Cool. Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes it gets thrown away. Sometimes we leave it at the exhibition space. So it's already in the contract. The exhibition space takes care of taking the installation down and discarding the material. Sometimes we think with the exhibition space, for example, the crepe paper carpet we made in Houston, we brought it on beforehand, like we got to do something with the paper. So we already found elementary schools that wanted the paper to use in their classes. But yeah, so it depends.
One of the, I think this is the caring attitude why I matched the two of you up, because of course Frederiek Bennema is part of she contributed to she co-wrote an essay together with Anne-Sophie Lehmann, Teaching by Heart, Care, Education and Art, and yeah, maybe you can explain a little bit about the contemporary education practice that you're, is that, if I understand it correct, set up, or yeah?
Yes, I'm continuously developing an educational practice at Minerva Art Academy, Groningen, which entails that I try to facilitate spaces in which students can learn and develop their work within and with an environment, the context they're part of. That can be a temporary context. I've done 2 projects. One I described in the book and the essay, which was a project in which I went with a small group of students to a small village in the northern part of the Netherlands. And another, I did a similar in another village. And I developed a project within in the Art Academy, a club. And there we are clubbing together while caring for the environment and showing that there, from a point of togetherness, it is better to start working from seeing the context as a relational field in which care is a practice and a field value. So it's not necessarily a very static approach towards care. So like, I only care for my own. I mean, to care for something can also be very selfish. Mm-hmm. To make that, to see that from a relational perspective and build upon relations. Yeah, that's it's maybe a bit abstract, but.
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, I liked what triggered me was, of course, this you're now talking about the ecological arts
pedagogy. Yeah.
Terrible
word.
My own handwriting. I'm sorry. Because what I really liked in that is that you that of course the art and design students, they learn how to take care for and take care for or about. You make it really the distinction, and for both the environment, each other, and their works as starting point. And that's yeah.
Yes, exactly. It's really based on practicing alertness to something that is new, out of the familiar environment. So what I asked the students to do is to make contact with people they didn't know, and out of those very banal and seemingly simple encounters they had, and drinking tea and baking cake together. I mean, we still do things like that. Very genuine contacts are being made, and based on that, they do not impose their ideas on what is good for the other, what's good for someone else, but try to really dialogically develop an idea that is based on care. So based on what is good for you can be also good for someone else. So there, it showed them to create things that are not only based on taking something in, so to make something that is beneficial to their own individual practice, but they learned that as soon as you open up to the perspective of someone else, that it also benefits their practice. So there's it's a two-way effect. And it's mostly the environment that's also very much is. I think that's it's also a very in situ situation. So each project is different because all the environments offer different opportunities to act upon. Yeah.
I loved how you, but also now with taking down, with thinking of taking down the exhibition. I love how you also described the role of the curator in this in the essay, and also about it was being brought up by Sjoerd van Tuyne 2 days ago as well, and I'm yeah. Do you want to elaborate on that, or do you want to?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, at some point, I had a conversation with someone about my research and about what I was doing in both villages, and this person told me that it's as if you are curating processes of other people, and I was like, yes, that's true. In a way, I am curating it. So I went deeper into this idea of and the similarities also with the teacher within this ecological way of developing a learning environment, and to a curator. So of course the word curator comes from cura, care, the Latin word, and it's really trying to open up possibility for others to act. And I think that's also what teachers do in their jobs, as facilitating opportunities for others to learn. So there are so many parallels, and well, I think that's the beauty of how you can arrange it, so that it's. I mean, knowledge and experiences are everywhere. I think as teachers, we need to facilitate opportunities for others to navigate through these opportunities to get knowledge, or to value knowledge, or to experience what, or create experiences also. So there are, I think, a few parallels, and I try to sketch them in the essay, which I discovered while I was working in those villages.
This might be an interesting moment to open up the question of free consento. It might be good to let him or her answer it live, but then I think I have to open up the mic for him, because I think there's both the bridge in both of your practices within this question. But I'm sorry, he or she is permitted to talk, so feel free to ask your question in person.
The microphone is muted still, so.
Richard? Yeah, talking is permitted for now. Free?
Hello?
Yes.
Hey, because of the setting of the event as well. Like, I was wondering if you can't actually be present at the where an installation have to be built, and how would you actually build it, like otherwise, like sort of without being present? Or have you ever done it before?
Well, actually, we are working on a piece right now that will be realized in Houston, USA, and it happens to be at the same space where or at least it's an initiative from the same space where we have been building the crab paper carpet. But it's a totally new way of working for us, because it used to be just the three of us in a dialogue creating this piece. And now we are working with a building team that we know or partly know. And what we do is, it's really interesting for us too, because we have been thinking about this question for a longer time. And now, since this situation, and we still want to realize also work on the other end of the world. What we do is we create small pieces or tryouts or parts of the setup, and we just send pictures, movies. We have Skype, Teams meetings, Zoom meetings to show what we are doing, and they are creating more or less the same, and then we discuss. So actually, it's the sometimes it gets close to what we are doing with the three of us, but then now with the few people working in Houston and us working in Amsterdam or in Eindhoven. So it's totally new for us, but it is an interesting experiment at least. And I'm really curious what the end result will be, because it's going to be realized in a few weeks. So, but yeah, we are working on this question actually.
I think what's really interesting is that it really forces us to break down our practice into pieces, categorizing them in things you can ask of other people to do and things you can't ask of other people to do. So we know from experience that we can't ask people to do what we did at V2, which is sit on our knees for 7 days and roll like 15,000 pieces into rolls and make elaborate patterns and tell them where the pieces to go. But what we can do is make the choices for location, color, material, and then we can look at a pattern and we can deconstruct the pattern. So you have within a pattern, I think you have the larger pieces and the smaller pieces, and so that, and then there comes a point where you can say, okay, you cannot instruct people in Houston to go like yellow, yellow, red, orange, yellow, yellow. So this part you have to leave at them. Luckily, we had some experience with this because we made a few other interactive works in the past where we let this like design decisions up to the visitor. So then you, yeah, then you see what happens, but you have the guidelines. You can make the guidelines in such a way that it will look kind of the way you imagine it to be. I don't know if this answers your question.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think it's really interesting. Thank you.
Great.
How does that change your relationship to this? Will to the installation itself? Do you feel more like a manager or more like a teacher in this case, or maybe a combination of both?
It's a little bit a combination of both, but since we are still working with the materials, although not for the end piece, but still like as like in the decision making, as Bob calls it, it feels still as if you're working on the piece. Although it's really strange that there's no like the hard labor that we are really used to. For example, for the piece at V2, like 7 days in a row on our knees for like long days. That's something totally different. So I'm really curious also what kind of feeling I have if I see the end result in this case, because normally it's like really like, yeah, just a few hours before opening or a day before the opening, it's finished. And now there's not this like deadline feeling. So yeah, it's a different kind of feeling, but still, since we have the materials here, that feels kind of good.
Do you also take it as an opportunity for others to maybe change things you would not expect to be changed or to be different?
This happens for sure, but I think what happens is that and that's maybe similar to a way you can teach. I don't know, but is that the guidelines are really strict. So we know what the materials, where it's supposed to be, what the big shapes are, but everything within these guidelines, it's totally open and we cannot influence. So that's where I think that's where the experience is, what the experience of an interactive artwork. But that's also where the surprises are for us, so that you cannot control this. So the fact that you cannot control this will be part of the work, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I hope the fun part for us is, of course, this surprise. Like in the end, we had an image of what the piece would look like, but it's always different. And I hope the the people who are working in Houston on the piece have the same kind of feeling in the end, like, whoa, this was kind of fun. But there were a lot of guidelines, but still we could create the piece we wanted to do a little bit, at least. So I hope it's for them, it feels also like really a collaboration, and they had some freedom in this process.
Yeah, it's well, it is kind of similar to how I operate as a teacher within setting boundaries and deciding, okay, we go to this village, and then of course you have some practical limitations, and also deciding that you can't control the outcomes of what other people will do, not entirely. So
I have a nice photo. Can I share my screen, Florian?
Yes, I think you're allowed.
Let me see how this. Ooh, it sees a lot of things.
And can I add something by just saying something? That if there are no boundaries at all, because we as Bob said, we have been working on interactive pieces. If there are no guidelines or grids in these pieces, we had some sort of grid that could be used as a starting point to create your own piece or part of a piece, or then it's really hard to contribute to an exhibition in this case, or to a piece. So I think it's also kind of good if there are some guidelines or some grids or starting points to really do something and add something to a piece done by us or partly by us. So I think it's not like boundaries can sound like, oh, I can't do this, but it's also kind of not, because we have always guidelines for ourselves or boundaries, or to also to look like to look into what is the where can we go, as to where can we push the boundaries. But I think it's good for everyone to work with boundaries in a creative process.
Well, it's inherited. I mean, it's inherently part of a creative process. I think.
Yeah.
You can't do without.
Exactly.
Exactly, because there are boundaries, you can also create new ones and mold them and shape them in different ways.
Yeah.
So they're absolutely necessary.
I think so too.
Sorry, I cannot share my screen because I have to shut down. I wanted to show them Velcro carpet and the Velcro carpet that is like scrambled.
I will give it a try. Sorry, I have to look it up.
In the meantime, I think there's something interesting in opening up this thing around the feeling of ownership, and that's of course that things that I encounter a lot in my practice, because we commission a lot of works, and there is also this feeling in pushing too much towards away and the losing of ownership. But even in these specific tasks, I can imagine, I don't know how you work on location, if that's a group, an army of volunteers, or if you have a budget to also pay for them. But in that case, it doesn't matter. But I recall when I was still studying, I used to work at the Dutch Media Art Institute as a paid volunteer. Perfect. And I'm just quickly finishing the sentence. And I helped out Michael Johansson with a piece. He works with a lot of found material in the space, and he creates color-coded interesting situations. And even like this, the feeling that you think you described, the running towards a deadline, or even having one piece that doesn't fit in, or searching for a specific color. If you if you free that up already, you give all of these participants already such an interesting feeling of ownership as well, even though it's a co-ownership.
And I think that what Stijn is going to show you shows the different definitions of ownership, because this is when we make a work, what you see now. But if we go down, and
it's actually it's good to know that it's two layers of Velcro. So the two different parts. And this is like the filled in piece done by We Make Carpets. This is half of the piece done by us.
So this is, we left it open for the visitors of the exhibition to fill it in themselves.
And then this happens. Which is super nice because we can't come up with something like this. But it, yeah.
And the funny thing is, because it scales, and a lot of the Velcro pieces are put there without any intent, but you can see, because it was done by a lot of people, but when you if you look at it in detail, you see small pieces where people individually try to make something out of it, and I really like this image because it really shows what happens when you make a work interactive, and that's that you cannot expect people without education in art or without being an artist to fully involve themselves the way you do. So what happens is that you get a lot of people who do a lot of small work, and then I guess it looks like this.
How does that, if you compare the three of the ownership question, do you feel that all three of them are yours? Are they all three of them We Make Carpet work? Because you in the explanation you already said half of it is done by us and half.
Conceptually it is, I think, but I think I also told you, Florian, at the opening, or maybe when I was taking photographs, that me personally, I have distanced myself already from the work the moment I finish it. So it already doesn't feel like something I made. And I have maybe I have it even more when looking at this work. It's no, yeah, they made it for sure, yeah. But the concept is ours. So we made it together, I guess.
I'm not sure if it matters in this case particularly, like who did what, or but the idea came from We Make Carpets, and then
Well, it's overall, because we've been talking about that as well, that you, of course, it is already an interesting constellation, the We Make Carpet, the three of you that all have individual practices as well. So also with Bob, I mainly talked about the ownership, or maybe ownership didn't come up then, but the relationship towards work that you create yourself and work that you create as a collective. But it's
Frederiek, can I ask you something? Is because how is your relationship towards that? If you're a teacher, do you see your students as a product of yourself, or something you made?
No. I never see students as an outcome of my teaching or what they make. No.
Okay.
It's more that maybe in some cases, like in the most recent projects, the club, I initiated it, but it's completely co-creative. So there is a lot of my energy and effort in it, also in the first idea. So I propose things, and then I stretch the boundaries of what I propose, and others kind of move into it or change it, alter it, and then we do it together. So then, well, I think I have, it's not really, it's not that I own anything. It's more that I create or facilitate maybe the possibility that something else can happen.
No.
So, and that's maybe the conceptual framework, or.
Yeah, but without you, the students would have been different people or different artists.
Yeah, but I'm not the only influence.
No.
Luckily.
Yeah.
There are more students, and there are more tutors, and they also influence each other.
Yeah.
So I think it's very important that I'm not the only one who's taking part in that process. But yeah, of course, yeah. Sometimes there can be a click, and there can be an extra push towards something that is, and sometimes you have an idea, and then you bring it in a certain way that a student thinks, "Oh, yeah, I came up with it."
Yeah, and then again, if I take it on a higher level, because I've been maybe it's nice. I've been involved with some schools like Design Academy Eindhoven, HKU Utrecht, and of course the schools where I studied. And if you look at it from a school's perspective, because sometimes they have very, very clear guidelines. For example, when Stijn was on Design Academy and I was teaching there, Liedewij Edelkort was there, and at that time there was a very the image was very clear that what kind of student had to be produced by this school. So the school does look at its students like they have to be a product by the school, right? So and the teachers work in this framework, right? Or how do you look at this?
Yeah, well, I try to find somewhere space to I try to create spaces so that I don't see students as products or as consumers.
Yeah.
Because I know that you can enhance this consumer attitude, and that it happens a lot. Because if you approach students as products, they will become consumers.
Yeah.
They live up to the expectations of of the environment. So I really try to break through this way of teaching.
Yeah.
So to not be directional, to impose the ideas and what I think the students should be, but try to see in the students what they can be.
Cool.
This might be a good bridge to the anonymous attendee who asked Frederiek if you could describe an example of one project from the village which you thought was successful. Or...
well, there are multiple. In this case, I think I would. Well, the across the street of I have to take one step back. We had kind of a home base in the village. The village is called Westerwijdert. It has 110 inhabitants, something like that. It's really small. And there is a huiskamercafé, a living room cafe, run by relatively new and young people who really try to bring new energy into the village. And across the street, also, that was our home base. We went every week to this living room cafe, and there we met, and there we discussed things, and we also could invite people from outside in this space. And across the street, so we created a rhythm of coming there, going, spreading around the village and talking to people, making things and coming back. And across the street, there was a former carpenter who lived there. And he was a bit lonely, you could say. And but he was really happy with all the attention of the students, most female students who came along and drinking cups of tea in his house, and but because I didn't pity him because of his kind of position, which was a bit of an outsider in the village, they really were genuinely interested in his stories. And what they did was, among other things, they started drawing him, and they made portraits. And there was one girl, she made a portrait of him, and with his parrot. And she came up while she was doing that with the idea to making postcards and making a kind of postcard service for the village, so that people who would normally not talk to each other or meet each other, that they could kind of start a chat or make a connection through these postcards. So she was drawing making his portrait, and asked him, like, to whom can I send this card? I also described this this event in the essay. So he was like thinking like, oh, who can I send this card to? And then finally he came up with someone who lived across another street, 200 meters away, so very, very close. And there was this very tough looking guy, a former mechanic, or maybe he wasn't even a mechanic still, like covered with tattoos, like this tough guy and this very bit lonely guy. They were about to meet, and she was bringing this card to this to the mechanic, and he was so he was almost emotional, like, oh wow, I didn't know he had a parrot. I used to have a parrot too. And he was touched, and he immediately decided to send a card back. So that was a kind of starting up a conversation, and that was not expected. And it was really coming from, like the discussions, the talks they had, and that was, I think, a really nice way of kind of making relations different in a small community. One of the examples. So.
Florian.
Yes.
You still there? Oh no, you're still there. Okay,
Yeah, I'm still there. Yeah.
I thought you were hanging.
No,
yeah, look, you fell asleep.
Oh no, for sure not. But this is really one of these things. Continuing Bob's question, there's still, of course, in being a teacher, there's this shape. If I can imagine that there's some that you're for sure have a lot of projects that you're proud of, or that you're even, maybe it's just being one of the influences that you can trace back, but. Well, maybe pride is in this ownership question in your case.
Yes, and of course I do kind of shape the process a bit. Like while we're having those conversations in the kitchen, drinking tea, and students presenting their plans, and you can always kind of highlight certain ideas. Like, oh well, if you have this idea, maybe what do you think? What will happen? And maybe you should try that out. So you can emphasize certain things. And then, of course, it's really up to the students how they act upon that. So what they choose to execute or not. And yeah, sometimes it's really nice to see how things start working, because you kind of gave just this tiny push and highlighted just this thing. And that's really nice. Yeah. And that makes me, of course, very proud of what they achieve in the end.
Maria in the chat also asked We Make Carpets the question how you choose the patterns of the image at V2, for instance, the one at V2.
Well, the one at V2 is quite complicated. No, there's no plan in advance, that's for sure. So also at V2, we just started this pattern from the middle. But we decided to have actually two patterns on top of each other. That's kind of difficult to explain if you don't see it. Maybe I will look up a picture later on, but it's actually, we just start creating this piece from the middle, and then it evolves into this end result. So you have, in the case at V2, you have a pattern in color. So there's 6 different colors, maybe 5, I'm not sure, 6. And there's a pattern in color, but there's also a pattern in height of the paper rolls, which is quite complicated. It sounds really easy, but it's a diagonal pattern on top of, yeah, you can see it quite good. So you have a color pattern, but you have also the rhythm of the height of the paper rolls. So it's like, for example, this piece, like 3 high ones, 4 low ones, 2 high ones, 2 low ones, 3 high ones, 2, and that continues. And so the piece is like, it has like, it's mirrored twice. but the height goes over it like all the way. So that's kind of complicated, but the answer to your question is that we just come up by having this talk like while working with the three of us, and then yeah, it evolves. It's just we're just working on it, and it comes as we go.
Yeah, I think we referring back to when I explained how we approach making our work. You could also explain it by that we try to delay the actual making as long as possible. So we do very little creative stuff before we actually start. And once we're there, we want to do all the making on the spot. So once we're there, and maybe if you saw us, Florian, when we were working there, we are next to talking a lot of crap. We're also continuously discussing the patterns, looking what other people are doing, where it should go, why some color doesn't fit next to another color, where it should go next, how big pieces should get. So I think that's what we do. We try to delay all the whole creative process. We try to delay it until we're on the spot, and then we just go.
And then it's the three of you, or do you also are you happy with with suggestions from outside? For example, I didn't, but I can imagine curators also making suggestions. Or
we are really happy with suggestions to not use the suggestions. So the boundaries we get more boundaries by getting more and more suggestions. So if you suggest to do that, we are definitely not going to do that. And if you suggest something more, we will also not do that. So we are really happy with suggestions to create more boundaries, actually.
But then you also know what you don't want to do.
Yeah. Even if it's maybe a good idea, it's just like, since the process is partly really creative and partly just organizing stuff, it's really nice to really like focus on what we can decide for ourselves and come up with ourselves. So, yeah.
I'm also curious. I mean, while you're working on the project, or maybe also in between, is it also that when you walk around, well, you don't walk around now on the streets, but and that you see patterns everywhere, or you look differently at patterns as soon as you encounter them?
It's kind of funny, but I don't get really. I don't get inspired by patterns, or at least not to use in what we are doing.
No, but maybe that you see patterns in things as soon as like as a fixation.
Yeah, maybe, yeah, but not to use like in the work that we are creating ourselves. Materials, yeah. So it happens quite a lot that I come across something and I think like, actually kind of nice if you really look at it. But not in patterns, although I like patterns, but not it's kind of weird maybe, or it can sound weird, I can imagine, but we don't get our inspiration from tapestry or from patterns, at least not from my point of view. Maybe Bob is going to answer something totally different. But
I was walking. I was on a festival once with a group of friends of mine, and one of the fathers of one of the friends of mine. And this friend of mine said, well, my father, he was spending the afternoon with these and these and these designer friends of yours and artists. And he said, it's not normal the way they look at things. They continuously talk about, oh, did you see this? Oh, you must see how this looks, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, I know I and my friends you just look at things a different way because it's your job, I guess. And I also think Stijn does this, but maybe he denies it.
No, I do, but not to use. So for sure, I do. That's also where we get the list of materials we want to use in pieces from. I think.
Do you also have a literal archive of materials?
We used to have this list. There was an actual list of materials we would like to work with. Now there's no actual list anymore, but I think we still know what we really hope to work with one day. But it depends on the question. Sometimes it happens that we get a question from a museum, for example, and then we think like, a couple of years ago, we have been talking while drinking a beer about this and this material or this and this way of putting the piece together. And then we can use something from the list. So that happens. But to be clear, it's not like that I look at patterns and think like, this is super nice to use at V2. That's something totally different.
No, I understand, because it's of course site specific. So
yeah,
that wouldn't work that way.
No, and it really doesn't work that way. So for example, if you look at the paper rolls, you can think like, you can do anything with it, but that's not true, because it's like round shaped, and we really want to have them close to each other so they fall into each other a certain way. You have the option of roll it two-way, so it's all these boundaries again that we have to take.
But also the space, I guess.
Also the space, yeah.
However
sure.
big it is.
Yeah.
We did make a very clear decision, though, when we started, that we didn't want to do any geometrical shapes.
True.
Because?
Yeah, just I have a feeling, or looking back at past works we made, we thought, this material, let's try and do something that's not symmetrical. Yeah, this was a decision we made on one of the decisions we made on forehand.
Of course, in the approach, you really also specifically looked at the pillars in the space, which you incorporate.
Yeah, we actually wanted to add a pillar, but
yeah.
But now we
in the question about materials, does that also mean that if you like, do you have a sky of the sky's the limit material, like one material that you'd love to work with but will always will never make it in a budget decision with a museum, or is it not necessarily these type of materials?
I know that once we discussed a work made out of light bulbs, and it ended up being LED carpet we made in Mu in Eindhoven. And we did the calculations for the light bulb work, like 10 or 15,000 light bulbs, something like this. But the power it required was just too much. Yeah, so that's, I don't know. Yeah. This was one of the things that we thought, okay, so working with electricity, there are limitations on that, I guess.
And actually, once we had some sort of the question to work with diamonds, the cheaper sort of diamonds, so glass diamonds. But actually, I think it's kind of interesting to work with cheaper material than that. So to really look into the more to simple material, as simple as a piece of paper, for example, and to look at like what are the options with just a few thousand pieces of paper, instead of looking into really expensive materials.
No, you never know. Yeah. No, we'll see, Florian, what comes by. But if the sky is the limit material comes by, there'll be another sky is the limit material.
Yeah, that's sure. Yeah. And I know, well, because you aim to recycle everything, there are you don't also have environmental boundaries for now, or.
Well, we've been having this discussion for a long time already, because we've been doing this project for 11 years, and obviously 11 years ago the plastic soup wasn't as well known as it is now. And if we look back at the materials we use, like 80% is plastic. And but then again, like acrylic paint is plastic, but it isn't as obvious as the plastic we use. So with the three of us, we've been having this discussion for a long time. What should come first? You know, does the art and the artwork comes first, or the consideration of what materials you use to make the artwork? And we are I think we keep having this discussion. We're not clear about how to approach this, because sometimes we've approached it for a while from the side that we say, okay, these materials are already made, so they're already made for the market, so we just take them and use them. But then again, if you take them from the market, there will be produced more. So I think it's a very interesting discussion, and I think it puts us for a dilemma also. Like, okay, we use these consumer materials, which are made of plastic most of the time, and there, I think for us, there's clearly a direction also from galleries and musea that they ask, or even write it in the contracts that the exhibitions have to be 100% recyclable, or has to be like zero emission or whatever. So I think slowly, like also the market of site-specific artworks is moving in a direction where people just ask for
we know much better what happens after the exhibition is like done, or that's the question where we started with, right? So for example, this piece is going to be new paper in a few, I don't know how fast this goes, but
I see the comments of Maria. She's surely right that a painting is a sustainable product because it's not made for temporary use. But then again, if I look at the studio building where I'm at, where there are 40 artists and at least 10 or 15 painters, there's a lot of paintings they made that are kind of temporary, but not as temporary as our work. But then again, a lot of them will not end up in the trash also in the end, I guess. Or am I?
And would you also?
I
always like this this conversation about searching for boundaries. Like one of the examples that I the works that I really like is the candy bar carpet, where because for me it's I looked at the Twix and the Bounty bars in such a different way afterwards, because I never noticed these patterns on them. It's lots of different candy bars, probably also a couple of thousand laid down in a carpet. Would you consider in this case, or would you still with discussions around food now, would you still make it, or would you also then say, well, I can only exhibit it for this amount of time because then it's still consumable afterwards? Or would you?
The candy bar carpet was very interesting because we were having this discussion before we made it. We were told that we would get products from the factory that were like not good for consumers. So either had iron in them or were overdate or something. But then in the end, we just got stuff that was good for the shops. But then we already had it. And then we went for it. Yeah, I don't know.
And it was kind of complicated because it was in the old Mars factory. So they really wanted to have the piece done also. So and we wanted to create the piece, of course. There was this discussion, but it's still kind of vague what we have been using. And I think it were just really good candy bars. But yeah.
Did it also cause negative reactions?
No, at that time, no. No, it also because it, at least not as far as I know, it was a festival around food.
The pindakaas carpet from Vintage Schippers was
exactly
next to
it.
But I'm thinking about it a bit because I at the time maybe I felt a little bit uncomfortable with the work, and I still do, I guess. But I also like it that I feel a little bit uncomfortable with it. Also with the work that are made from plastics or stuff.
Although I'm not kind of sure if we would do it now. at least. I'm not sure if because I have the
No.
same feeling that it was because there was this discussion, and then in the end, probably we just used good food for it.
Yeah,
But,
no, I also don't know. No, I really don't know.
But it's the same, like with every new piece, we have new discussions or dialogues of whatever you want to call it about materials, every aspect around or about the piece, actually. So.
But isn't it also like one of the effects that it raises the discussion among other people also? So that's also worth.
Yeah. Also, for example, we have been creating a piece also done by just blank paper, and it was a piece of 500 square meters. It was just 2 boxes of paper, printing paper, which every office uses. Like, okay, maybe now a little less, but at the time for sure, like daily, by printing emails and everything, just read once and then thrown away. And then afterwards, there was this discussion in a local newspaper about what was going to happen with the paper that we used. Although it was like a piece that was there for 2 weeks and it had visitors and people really looking at paper in a way. So it's that discussion is then really interesting. I think, like, okay, for sure, it becomes waste kind of fast, but that's also part of where our work is maybe about, although we don't talk about it with the visitors, but only between each other. But I think these discussions can be really interesting.
I liked how, in our case, how many people, the people who saw it right away thought, well, because of the colorful paper, that they right away said, well, at least it will be sketching paper at one point. That's no problem at all. Because so that's interesting to hear that the blank paper got this other notation.
Yeah.
There's another question about maybe a possible space, but maybe it's good. Do you want to repeat the question in the chat? Let's see. Oh.
Hello.
Hey.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I was just interested because a lot of the pictures I've been seeing of things you've been doing have been like indoor spaces. And is there a certain environment that's maybe outdoors or a different kind of setup that you think would be interesting to try something in?
Well, we are always interested in new sites to work in or on or at. But we have been working also for quite some installations outside. Also, for example, in the desert, which is kind of hard to work in as an environment. But yeah, we are always interested in new sites. So whether indoors or outdoors, but outdoors we know now because we have been working outdoors a few times and we have had quite some questions to create a piece outside. The boundaries where we have been talking about and we think are sometimes happy with boundaries. Outside is a totally different kind of game because you have all these forces that you have to take into account by suggesting materials and but of course, yeah, if there comes a question to create a piece outside, we will definitely look into it for sure.
I think maybe nice to know because Stijn already said if there comes a question, it's maybe if I look at our work now, I think all the work we made for at least the last 6 years was all the works were in commission, which means we are almost always asked to do something somewhere. And then most of the institutes or people who ask us to do something, they have an indoor space or a space that's partly indoor or part of a museum or gallery. So yeah, request to all the people with outdoor spaces out there. Yeah, I think it's a luxury maybe that we're in, or maybe it's a way of working. I don't know. What do you think? Is it? It began as a luxury, but and it became a way.
For
of
sure,
working.
it is.
Yeah.
No, it is. And actually, if I look into it, because for example, we did a piece for Mu, which wasn't the question to create something outside, I think, but we still did in the end. So we are definitely, no, it's a luxury to only work in commission, I think. And of course, we always work, or we try to work on new pieces, just coming up with them ourselves. But it's kind of hard because then we have to set the boundaries from scratch, and that's kind of hard for us to do, I think. So yeah, it works really well to work in commission, and it's a luxury, of course.
Yeah.
And if we can get commissions outside, perfect.
Bring it on.
I can also imagine that because you have never really done them before, that people don't really, it doesn't enter the idea of asking you to do it. Like the last trick you've done. It's a thing that's exciting for others to ask you for.
Yeah, no, true.
Maybe even at one point replying to an open call or for something outside could be the other way around to get there. And I can also imagine, like, for of course, some friends of mine are doing artworks for train stations with just this idea of making it workable for 35 years could also be an interesting added boundary, because all of your work is temporary, or even at least the starting point is temporary, right?
Well, not anymore. It used to, but we have been doing some permanent pieces. Also, for example, some pieces are hanging at Zeeuws Museum in Middelburg.
But it also started as temporary.
It started as temporary.
That Florian was right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's true. But one of the boundaries, for example, that we set ourselves was to have it like a loose laying or loose in pattern. But a couple of years ago, we just started sticking things together or putting things together in another way. So that gives a lot of more options if it comes to making the pieces more permanent, which is really interesting. And actually, we have been thinking about a piece for a metro station, I think, in Toronto once.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
So we would definitely be really interested in, because it's a totally different starting point for us to create a piece. Now it's mostly just an art space and we get a space and some sort of carte blanche to do something. And it would be really interesting to work with all these boundaries if it also comes to the technical part of the installation.
Hey, and since we're talking dreams, Frederiek, what's your future of education, or what's your dream?
Well, that's a huge question.
But where do you want to go? Like, because the question for us was, I think, like, is there an outdoor space you want to work in? I can imagine that there's a place you want to go within the next few years.
Well, the term ecological already fell in this conversation. I've now focused mostly on the education environment itself. I'm now since September also teaching in a new master's program in Groningen, so that's a really nice opportunity to develop further this idea of how to have this caring environment. So create a caring environment from which you try to kind of figure out what the student needs and not to impose your idea of what kind of product you want to produce. But I recently bought a nice piece of land in France.
Okay.
And sounds a bit like a sidetrack, but it's really related to the idea of. Sometimes I compare the Art Academy with agriculture and like a conventional agricultural landscape. We're having carrots and pears and all kinds of species, and neatly within their own boundaries. And sometimes they're allowed to play together, but not too much. Then they should go back to their own carrots with, well, anyway. Whereas I think it would be interesting to see educational environment as part of a bigger world, and to approach it also as a kind of food forest, so that you kind of really use it as an ecosystem, and use the untapped potential within the educational institute, but also from outside. So kind of cross the boundaries of not only being inside, but also outside. So those principles are very much related to how we care for the environment in another sense also. So I was just thinking of, well, maybe you can make new crossovers in seeing how this care for the environment can take place also outside the art academy, or maybe in summer schools, or in food forests in France. You never know. Well, that's like that's really like loose dreams, but there's something there in the future.
Yeah, nice.
Who knows?
Sounds good.
Sorry, Florian, back to you. Yeah, sorry, I was taking over. Yeah.
Feel free to add. I think I checked a lot of questions that I had prepared already. So maybe there are some questions from the audience. Feel free to hop in if you want, but also from you, if you have questions for the other speaker, feel free to ask him.
Yeah, well, I was curious. Like you have now this piece in Houston where you make it more collaborative, or more open it up to others to participate in the work. Is that also a path you would like to continue working on, or is that just now for practical reasons something that is?
It is something we have been thinking about for a longer time. And now we are actually forced to work this way if we still want to realize a piece in Houston. And I'm actually really happy that we are forced to have this starting point to really do it instead of talk about it. So if you ask me, I think we will continue this path for sure.
Yeah, but I'm looking back. So I'm looking. That's why I'm looking. I'm looking at our website on my iPhone, and it was already 6 years ago that we made our first interactive work, which was LED carpet, and then it took a while. And then we really did it again when we were in Melbourne. Yeah.
That's the starting point of the more collaborative pieces, but it's still something different than we are doing here, because it's from scratch, like something created in collaboration. So that part I'm really interested in, and of course that goes together or hand in hand with the participation from others. If it is a building team, or maybe the students in Houston, or
I'm really curious because I really miss that's really personal, I guess. I really miss the excitement. So the fact that I know that I'm going there to have the material in my hands, to be on the site, to see it all happen, because it's on the university terrain, and then
that's exactly what I already said. Like, I'm really curious what I feel if I see the finished piece. Like, if you still feel the same thing as in V2, looking at the done piece. Like, who knows, Bob?
And it's exciting. It feels a little bit like office work right now, don't you think?
Yeah, for sure. There's a few moments that were like really when we were working hands-on with the same material as they are working. Then it was kind of magical too. Like, oh, we are doing the same thing, 2 different time zones, same time. That was kind of exciting, but it was of course too short to really feel like the labor and the excitement afterwards.
There is of course still this possibility of a hybrid form between the 2 practices. You can also have this team in this village in Groningen, for example, maybe even that you collaborate with, you work with, but every now and then also or let them do their corner or step aside and.
Yeah.
Yeah. The possibilities are endless. So the thing that, but of course you can. But what I find really interesting and really hard at the same time is the boundaries of from where I let go. So I'm not an artist to have other people create my art. So I find it really exciting, but also difficult to think some things, and that's why I'm really curious to see how this project will end. To see, because it already feels like I'm letting a lot of things go for the way I'm used to working.
Well, it's risky also. I mean, you give up agency.
Yeah.
So that's it's quite tricky in a way.
It is, but maybe we will be surprised, like even more surprised with the end result. Although it's not about the end result, we know from experience that it's also really about like the labor that goes into it. So, but we'll see. We have to. I think it's too soon to
for sure
to talk about the used in peace.
Yeah, maybe also it doesn't have to be only one like way of working.
No. Also, if it comes, for example, we were talking about a lot of pieces that we've been doing are temporary, but I'm really interested in more permanent pieces too, and they can, of course, those two paths we can still walk next to each other.
I do really love this in the two works that I know that you now mentioned, and the one at the NDSM, the ones that are somewhat permanent. They started, of course, temporary, and then people, how I imagine it, people fall in love with it, or at least care for it enough to say they don't want to get rid of it, which is also a beautiful starting point.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, especially one in Zeeland. The one in the NESM is also like, well, while it's there, why take it away?
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, and we have to the one in Zeeland really is permanent, like it's made to last. And I think the one on the NDSM we have to repair like twice a year.
Yeah, I think before closing off, because I'm really happy that you took your time in this current environment, because I'm aware of how draining a Zoom conversation can be. Are there still unanswered questions from either the audience or the participants that you really want to address? Or I'll give it a couple of seconds. Well, if that's not the case, I really want to thank both We Make Carpets and Frederiek Bennema for joining this this conversation. One of the 4 conversations that were for me really inspiring, really rich. So I also will make the others available online as well. Feel free to look into that. The book I mentioned is as PDF downloadable for free, but also available in our web store. I want to just thank everybody also for being in the audience, for participating, and happy rest of the weekend. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.